Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. So excited and pleased to have Deb Bockley from Global Furniture Group. Deb Bockley is going to be speaking to us today on textiles and the importance that they play within healthcare and infection control. So I'd like to introduce Deb Bockley. If Deb, maybe you can just introduce yourself to our team.
Hi there, I'm Deb, and I am with the Global Furniture Group. I've been with them for 27 years, and I look forward to sharing what we have learned about textiles over the last 27 years, and hopefully it will be helpful for you going forward.
Thank you. So let's go ahead and bring up the presentation.
So thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear from us and to understand better the world of textiles as it relates to healthcare. The reason that Global is speaking about healthcare today is the fact that we manufacture furniture for Canadians. We're a Canadian-owned company. We are, as part of the manufacturing sector in Canada, contribute $1.73 billion towards the GDP, and that is about 11% of the economy, and we are very proud to be a part of this whole process and to be part of the Canadian landscape. We employ over 4,500 people in Canada, and so we are dealing with people you know. We have people, probably neighbors, friends, families that work with you and that will be also experiencing the healthcare segment. So we want to make sure that as we go forward, we are getting textiles right. And the reason that a manufacturer of furniture is talking about it is we don't make the fabrics, but we do have to use them. And it's really important to us that better decisions get made as it relates to textiles and healthcare. Global also represents workplace, education, and government. And even though the conversation today is very much about healthcare, we want to make very clear that a lot of the things that we've learned in terms of the healthcare landscape is also appropriate to workplace, education, and government locations. And the reason is that people travel everywhere, and the same kinds of things that are happening in healthcare are also happening in other locations. COVID hit everywhere. It didn't just hit hospitals. So having this information will be helpful not only for healthcare, but any segment of the market that you might be working in. And the reason Global is talking about it is really the fact that we're often asked what sets us apart from everyone else. And I think what sets us apart is the fact that we actually work with healthcare professionals. We work with IPAC people. We work with health and safety people. And we really want to understand what their challenges are, what their needs are. We're a great manufacturer, but we do not live in their world. And in order to do a better job for them, we have to understand what challenges they have. So we're going to move through the fabrics from their perspective and their experiences. It's not really about what you are told, but it's what we've learned. And a lot of what I've learned is from our clients and going to site and looking and seeing what their issues are. As far as healthcare, we've been focused on healthcare since 1985. That's 30 plus years. And because of our other verticals, we're able to add a lot of insight and strength to this category because we have all that we've learned from other segments, but we can also use the products and the product knowledge and the technologies from our other verticals in this vertical, making it a very large scope. In terms of the markets that we cover, you can read my slides faster than I can say them, so I will speak to the slides. I will not be reading the slides. But as you can see from the list, we cover quite a range of healthcare opportunities and quite a range of fabric selections for each of those opportunities that we'd be involved in and providing furniture for. A number of experiences that we've enjoyed over the years, the most recent being the Cordelucci Vaughan Hospital. But as you can see from the list, we have a great deal of experience in healthcare. And some of the groups that you're looking at are not just one location, but they're multiple locations. We have the entire province of Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, PEI, and New Brunswick. Working with us exclusively in terms of their healthcare requirements. And so our experience is vast, be it the acute care market right through to end of stage hospice. So we feel we have a lot of value to add. The other thing that's important to note, as a Canadian company employing Canadian employees, we contribute to our tax system, and our tax system supports our healthcare system. So the fact that we're part of the economy, part of the solution, we also take it very seriously what's going on in those environments. And what we've learned over the years is fabric is almost always the first thing to fail. Products will last forever. Most products will last forever, at least global products last forever. However, the fabrics don't. And I've seen clients throw out good product because the fabric has failed. So this is to try and help understand if the materiality and the construction of the product is right, then making better choices on fabric can make products last longer, but it should also enable you to fix the problem rather than throwing away the product, because we're all paying for this as part of our tax system. So I want to start with the ABCs of textiles. I think some of the basics about textiles get lost over the years because we're dealing with them all the time. And sometimes we forget, or we just haven't had it explained to us. So what I consider the ABCs of textiles starts with the fact that we don't make the fabrics as a furniture manufacturer. Most furniture manufacturers don't make fabrics. Some of the furniture manufacturers may own a textile mill, but again, that's a separate business and they're doing it on their own. All of the manufacturers of furniture can source the same textiles. So none of the textiles are exclusive. Even those that are owned by other manufacturers of furniture, we can still access their textiles. It may not be the same price, but we can all access pretty much everything that the other can access. So trying to select textiles shouldn't be restricted just to what one manufacturer has, and certainly designers are free to go and look across the market at the various mills and the products available. What's important to note, though, is that when we purchase fabric to use on a product, we need to find a way to price that out. So the way that that method is consistently done is by grading. So if I have 3 chairs identical side by side, and they're identical in the materiality and construction, the only thing that might change the price is the textile that you put on it. So that is done by grading. Now, the interesting thing is, in our industry, there is no consistent method of grading. Nobody said, okay, this is grade A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. We all make up our own method of grading based on our approach, and I'll call it pockets. I find that's probably the easiest way to describe it. So we all have different size pockets, and some manufacturers will grade them 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Other manufacturers, A, B, C. And I do know of some manufacturers that have 3 pockets. So they have an ABC pocket. Global has, I think, published up to grade 12 or 14. And we have what I call smaller pockets. So by example, our pockets may be $1 to $5, $5 to $10, $10 to $15, that kind of progression in terms of pricing. ABC company, they have fewer pockets, but they use all the same textiles. So how is that possible? It's possible because their pockets are bigger. So in pocket A, it may be $1 to $50, $50 to $100, $100 to $150. So their pockets are bigger. And if I'm using a grade 6 fabric for global, that would go into pocket number 2. So that would be a grade 2 textile. For ABC company, that same $6 item or textile would go into pocket A. So it may be $6, but it's in a $50 pocket. So it really is important to understand how a company grades and how big the pockets become in terms of the types of products that are covered within the one grade. Because sometimes you may break even and really have a $50 textile, but in other cases you may have a very low grade textile and it's in a bigger pocket. So it's really important to understanding because the thing about grading, it has nothing to do with quality, absolutely nothing. Grading is simply about price. What the manufacturer of the furniture has to pay for the textile will determine where it falls in their grading process. And what the manufacturer pays for the textile is often determined by fashion. Fashion dictates textiles as much as anything else because fabrics are fashion. It may be the threads, it may be the type of textile, it may be in terms of the grade, it may be quality, but it doesn't mean it's quality. I have seen products that have a very high durability rating, the double rub, and they're a grade 2, and another equivalent type product may have 30,000 double rubs instead of 500,000 double rubs, and yet it can be in a much higher grade because that's the pricing structure of the mill. And so we have to put it in the grade that it fits. So what I would suggest, and one of the things that is important to note here, is a lot of times we see pricing exercises or we're asked to provide pricing based on a specific grade. The thing is, that's really unfair to your clients. And it's really unfair to our clients because grading doesn't dictate any type of quality, and you can play with it depending on the size of your pockets. So it really is better if in that pricing exercise, if a specific product is identified, you pick this manufacturer, this textile, and everybody has to price it exactly the same. And then you'll get a truer reading of the product cost. If you go by the grading, then the fabric cost will affect the product cost, and that's not always the best for our clients. The other thing in terms of the basics on fabrics is the difference between the textiles that the durability test is based on double rubs versus the durability testing of hydrolysis. So with the coated textiles, and that's where you have that solid surface, it's a coated textile, it's impermeable, it's in the industry, I would say that we are at fault for many, many, many years calling everything a vinyl that has a coated top surface. However, not everything is vinyl. Vinyl is specific to one product, and we're going to talk about that. The other products that may be coated but not vinyl, they require what's called a hydrolysis test, not a double rub. So the double rub is the Weizenbeek, and this is a double rub. It's a test that's done where they drape the fabric over it. They have an opposite reaction here, and there's a duct here. And that will do the double rub rating. The higher the rating, it's expected that the more durable the fabric. And what has been recognized is that, number one, the double rub testing over the past years really was an inadequate test in that some of the textiles ended up with very high double rub ratings. But what people failed to recognize is that the duct that is doing the testing is also wearing down as that test is being conducted. And because the tests were being conducted in different facilities, oftentimes you get a very high double rub rating because this is wearing down too. So the Textiles Performance Committee Board, they've said that that duct should be changed after every 100,000 double rubs. And that will give you a more accurate rating on the durability. However, that isn't always done. So what they've said is if a fabric tests to 100,000 double rubs, that's a good rating. Some manufacturers or mills are actually doing the testing going beyond. So the question in terms of ask is if you see a very high double rub rating, ask them, when does that duct get changed to allow them to get to that rating? The other thing is polyurethanes, which have become very popular. They're also a coated textile, and you'll see more of that as we move through the presentation. Double rub ratings can be very high on those products. However, their durability may not be as high. And we've seen it continuously in the market, especially the last, I would say, 8 to 10 years. We've seen significant failures of textiles in the marketplace. And a number of those are polyurethanes, because the industry wanted to move away from PVCs. And so in comes the polyurethane with no PVCs. They should get a hydrolysis testing, because there's a lot of moisture in those products. And if they're not tested, and they're all tested with hydrolysis rating. However, those ratings aren't posted, and they very often don't share, they being the mills, that information. So you need to ask, if it's a polyurethane, ask what the hydrolysis test is. After that test, the word hydrolysis, there will be a number: hydrolysis 3, hydrolysis 5, hydrolysis 10. And what that means is they tested, if it's a hydrolysis 3, it's been tested for under 3-week condition, and they believe that that product will perform reasonably well. There's no guarantee, but reasonably well in regular conditions, regular hours, with no harsh chemicals being applied. Now, as healthcare, I don't think any of those things match. So those are the questions that are really important, because if you're expecting a product, and this is where we have to get together and have conversations, if you're expecting a product to last for 5 years and it's a hydrolysis 3, and it's not only 5 years, but it's 24/7, it has chemical exposure to disinfectants, then it's probably not going to last even the 3 years. So these are the conversations that are really important, and that's why we're here to point these things out. So as we recognize the stresses in healthcare are certainly higher than most other environments. And because we have IPAC, which is infection prevention and control, setting standards because they want to keep us safe and they want to keep us well, they are being charged with and having to keep these facilities infection free. And so we want to make sure that we support this. And what we're seeing more and more is it isn't just cleaning once a week, it's every day, and sometimes multiple times. So we have to try and work together to have the textiles match what the cleaning regimes and the disinfecting practices are. And that's why we're moving forward. But the other part of it is, it can't just be the fabrics that have to be paid attention to. We also have to look at the materiality and the design of the products and expectations of performance. We're not going to go into a lot of detail today in terms of the cleanouts, in terms of sealed seams, all of these things that contribute to better control and better infection control practices. However, it is important to note that these things also will contribute to the success of the textiles. And one of the things I'd like to just mention quickly, is the sealed seams. So we're often asked about the sealed seam process, and a lot of times it's brought to us, well, that's proprietary to Global. It isn't. Global is the only manufacturer that has made the investment to have the heat sealed seams. We did the research, we bought the technology, we have a crew of people that do this process. So it isn't something unique to Global in that nobody else can do it. However, there is a huge investment to be able to offer it. And it is a really a good solution for healthcare. In terms of making decisions, we also will be spending time talking about operational practices and how that affects the disinfectants that you're using, and looking at the protocols, because it's very important not just to know the disinfectants, but understand the processes. And we will look at performance expectations in relation to the day-to-day and in relation to what's important, because we have to set criteria to be able to prioritize what's most important. And when we do that, we are then able to make better decisions when it comes to textiles. It also allows us to put things in a better package so that we can assist and educate and help with this better decision-making process. So in the healthcare system, IPAC is very conscientious and very important. IPAC is infection prevention and control. And what IPAC, and it is a team, it is a role that someone plays within an organization. And what they're looking at is, how do we contain any microbial contamination? How do we stop things from spreading? How do we stay on top of things? So not only is it the disinfectants that they use, but it's looking at the materials of what's being purchased. So it is the materials being the textiles, but it's the materiality of the product. Is it porous? Is it non-porous? Does it have a lot of crevices? Can you clean it? How well can you clean it? What do you have underneath it? So these are some of the things that we would be looking at when we're actually making some decisions in terms of not only the product, but the textile. And it all goes hand in hand. One I will talk to here that I think is important, it doesn't often get addressed, is the knowledge that we know that bringing more light into space, having things brighter, more cheerful is very important to recovery and health. So spaces are getting brighter. They are getting lighter. The colors are very interesting. And so we also have to recognize that most people who go visiting someone in the hospital, who tend the hospital in an emergency, you're not often dressed in a suit. Very often it's casual wear. So jeans and jersey pants. And a lot of these are over dyed, and those dyes transfer onto the surface of the product. What's important to recognize is those indigo dyes are almost impossible to remove. So looking at textiles that offer the indigo dye resistance can be very vital in some areas. If you're using white, for example, in a merge, you really need to have something that's ink and dye resistant. Otherwise, it's going to look terrible. And I want to also stress that even though it is indigo dye or ink resistant, it's not self-cleaning. So if those indigo dyes or inks go on that material, you got to wash it off. You have to use soap and water and get it removed. Otherwise, it stays there. It doesn't disappear, and it's not self-cleaning. So just to be clear, because I find there's a real miscommunication on some of these items, because nobody remembers to go to the steps to make sure that it looks and stays the way that you want it to. So it's really important to understand the materiality and what we've learned from IPAC in order to help facilitate the decisions, not only for textile, but for the entire product. And when we look at what we're doing these days, I think that most everyone does a really good job of asking, what disinfectants are you using? And we get a list of those disinfectants. Then what? So what I really need to stress is that's not a big enough conversation. What we really need to look at is, what are the disinfectants you're using, but what is the operational practice? Because that will have a more consistent look and a more in-depth look at what you're doing and what you can expect. So when I say the operational practice, I'm asking, and what we need to explore is, what is the disinfectant in use? Check, we do a good job. But what we need to also be asking is, how wet, how long, how often, and what is the final step? Because most of the textiles, they'll say, oh yes, you can use that disinfectant, but if you're doing it once a year, once a week, how about 40 times a day? So if the textile is being exposed to this disinfectant and it's left wet because the contact time is 15 minutes, which means it has to be left wet on the surface for 15 minutes. And how often? Is it once a day, 40 times a day? And we do have clients that do this 40 times a day, depending on where the product is. So if we know that it's once a week, we might have a selection of textiles over here. If it's 40 times a day, we might have a smaller list of textiles, because that's a lot of demand. And the other thing is, what is the final step? So many of the criteria that we hear is, oh yes, you can do that. However, you have to follow with a water wash and dry. Now, we also know that that doesn't happen. And we have to keep in mind, we do also say that if you're going to be disinfecting a textile or anything, you should be cleaning it first. So it has to, because there's a difference between cleaning and disinfecting. Cleaning is the removal of dirt and soil on the surface. Disinfecting is to kill bacteria. So they're two different processes. So if you're only disinfecting, you're actually not cleaning the product, and the product needs to be cleaned. So those steps are really important. And oftentimes you don't have time to clean it, to disinfect it, and to do the final wipe. And in that case, we need to know that up front, because we want you to know up front what will happen if all of these stages are not followed. And when we look at that, it's really about what are the expectations. We may not be able to change the process that's in place regarding that particular textile, but we should talk to you about what that process is that you need to consider, so that we can say, okay, based on what your practice is, the performance expectations will be changed because, or have to change, because this product 40 times a day exposed to these disinfectants, no cleaning and no water wash, you can't expect them to last for 10 years if that's what you said initially. So we need to really connect what your expectations are for the textile, and then we need to look at the practice, the performance, and we really need to look at what the warranty is, because many times what you are doing will have to void a warranty, because the warranty is very clear that if you don't take these steps, you have no warranty. And that's where the disconnect is. So we like to make sure that we bring that circle together. It can't change things, or it may not change things, but at least you'll be aware of it. So as far as performance criteria, when we look at that, what we have to look at is things like, where will it be? Where will it be used? What are the types of people that are going to be using it? Is it just staff? Is it a patient care area? What level of body fluids will be expressed in the patient care area? So the application. And that's really important too, because oftentimes I'm called in, we're doing a waiting room. What furniture would you use? And my question is, have you ever gone and counted the number of waiting rooms, especially in a hospital, and the types of waiting rooms? They're not all the same. The use isn't the same. The population that uses it isn't the same. So we really have to narrow down to application. We can't paint everything with one brush, because one brush may not work. So those are the exercises. So no longer is it okay just to ask what you're using, but we have to look at all of these items. And when we look at some of the other things, so we talked about application and who will be using the textile, but where is it being used? And when I say where, I'm thinking of things like, is it a general area? Is it a transient area? Is it very populated? Is it low population, meaning high traffic, low traffic, 24/7? Like, what is the hours of use and supervised? And it's amazing how people do things in unsupervised areas that they wouldn't do if they were being supervised. And that really does also affect things. I mean, that's why you find gum and other things underneath a tabletop, or stuck in between the seats of a chair, is really because people do things when they're not being watched, or think they're not being watched. So by having these conversations, we will be able to help narrow down what textile is most appropriate for a particular space. And then, of course, it all has to be followed up with what the cleaning and disinfecting practices are. And then that comes down to how often, how wet, how long, how strong. And once you have all of that conversation with your furniture manufacturer, they should be able to help guide you to better fabric solutions. However, by talking to Staples and Global, you'll get farther. Okay, so in the environment, Global is really about education. We have all this good information, but if we don't share it and we don't help you make better decisions, then it's of no value. So we want to make sure that we're aware and that we're also educating. And the trend today, I got to tell you, there's a lot of white in hospitals. Days gone by, you'd never see that, but more and more these light fabrics. So we need to make sure that we're responding and that we're able to stay current, and that we're working with you to make sure your environments are certainly able to be what you want them to be. It's got to be fluid. So we're going to talk about specific textiles now, and the specific textiles that we have to talk about, I've categorized them. And what I need to stress is woven treated textiles. It's a category. So the next category is going to be coated textiles. And with woven treated textiles, that's where you have a woven textile and it feels like fabric. It looks like fabric. However, it's been treated. So it has a stain resistant, moisture resistant topping, and it develops a backing that is also moisture resistant. I didn't say moisture proof, moisture resistant. When I talk about each of these fabrics, this is based on Global's experience, based on my experience with our clients. And so if people disagree, that's okay, but I'm sharing what we have learned. Now, the most common woven treated textile referred to is kind of like Kleenex and tissue. Kleenex is a brand name, tissue is the product. Woven treated textile is the product, Krypton is the treatment process brand name. And so it's not actually a product, but I will say the most commonly referred to woven treated textile is Krypton. If we think back many years, back to the 50s, Scotchgard was Krypton. Scotchgard was what allowed families to take the plastic off the couch. Because prior to that, everybody had plastic on their couch so that when company came, they could take it off and put it back on the minute company left so that their furniture always looked great. Then we had Teflon, and we have had a number of different solutions, and there still are a number of different solutions. They all have a little patent difference, but they basically all do the same thing or similar thing. They have the moisture, the stain resistant topping and moisture resistance. The thing with the woven treated textiles to keep in mind is they're not all created equal. You still need to look at the double rubs. You need to look at the threads that are used. What is the construction of the product and how durable it will be, the landscape, how much you've got in there, because body fluids isn't just about urine. It's about people sitting and drooling into their hand, phlegm and blood. They don't go like this on their coat. They go like that on the arm of the chair. We see people in the car, they're picking for gold and they wipe it. And that happens in healthcare too. It also happens in offices, let's be frank. So how do you clean that if it's a heavily landscape product? The challenges are there. The product is porous and it can allow things to be logged in between the threads because it is a woven product. And it can have some harmful chemicals in terms of the treatment that's been applied. So if having products that are environmentally friendly is important, then you need to ask those questions. But in terms of the woven treated textile, the trend that we see is in healthcare, in hospitals, acute care, they don't want to even look at it. In Canada. In other countries, it's a little different. But here, our standards are very high and want to make sure that people are very safe. In elder care, it's still being used in front of house where families come and visit. However, as you move back into the stages of care, it's less and less. It goes to the coated textiles. And it really is about the cleaning, the disinfecting, and most of the woven treated textiles, if exposed to chemical disinfectants, the warranty is void because you can't tell when that's breaking down. You can't tell when it's no longer effective. So it is very important to check on those things and check on the double rub. But most importantly, just because it's a woven treated textile doesn't mean they're all the same. There is variations to everything. So we have to look at that. Relatively new in the healthcare, but certainly not new to the textile industry, is a product called Sunbrella. Sunbrella is most widely known as an outdoor textile. It has a water and stain repellent formula added to it so that it repels water and stains. And it's been great for outdoors. One of the reasons it's popular is most threads are like a radish. When you bite into it, it's red on the outside. On the inside, it's white. With the Sunbrella products, they're solution dyed, which means the thread is dyed so it's the same color throughout. So more like a carrot. So when you break that carrot, you see the orange. And the reason that's popular is with diluted bleaches, the Sunbrella product does not fade as quickly. And it will fade very little because it has that permeated color throughout the thread. So that is popular. And the fact that it's water and stain repellent is popular. And so it's being introduced into healthcare in some settings. Quite frankly, I'm not a believer in using Sunbrella in healthcare. And the main reason I'm not a believer in doing it is that when you properly clean or thoroughly clean these textiles, you need to reapply the water and stain repellent. And I'm not sure that our healthcare system has the resources to be able to do that. And so the fabric, after a period of time, will be ineffective in terms of its repellency. So is that a good solution? I'm not sure it is for healthcare. It also cannot be exposed to any chemicals, and it really does challenge the caregivers in terms, or the housekeeping staff, or the IPAC people, in terms of the regimes that they're setting up, because you have to avoid the textile if you've got any chemicals on your cloth. So there are challenges to this particular product. Then we have what we call another coated surface. So we've just done 2 woven textiles, treated textiles, and now we're moving to coated. So coated is what's always been called vinyl, and that's the solid surface that is impermeable, and I think we can all relate to what a vinyl is. So you'll see beside the title there that I have written the word old. The reason I've put that is vinyls have had a very bad rap. They have not been used for, I would say, about an 8 to 9 year period where they've been pushed aside because they have a lot of harmful chemicals. They have antimicrobials, they have fire retardants. So there's a lot of things that were in the product that made it less desirable. And some of those products, it wasn't just that they were manufactured with them. It's when people sit on them, some of those chemicals can leach out. It's been tied to cancer. It's been tied to loss of child. So a lot of things that are harmful and concerning. And so we push them aside because at landfill, they get destroyed, goes into the ground, and it starts all over again for the future generations. So there's been a push to get rid of them, and it was a good push. And so the manufacturer of these products said, okay, we can't afford not to have the business. And let me also point out, this has been one of the best performing products in my entire 27 years of being in this industry. At Global, rather, it has been the best performing. So there's a lot of mixed feelings about this product. It's also one of the best priced. What they have done is they've started to improve the product, change the product, and they are now, and they're really the new free vinyls. One of the biggest steps they did was remove the antimicrobials and the additives, the fire retardant chemicals. And they now, a lot of them, and again, not all vinyls are created equal. So you have to look at the details to make sure you've got the right information. But Prop 65. And Prop 65 is the identification of chemicals that has been published, is published, and they've prioritized them in terms of harm to health and things that we should try to remove from our environment. So with this, we see that there's a lot of changes, and there's a lot of good changes to the new PVC vinyls. They still have PVCs, but a lot of the other harmful things have been removed. So they are worth a second look. Polyurethanes. So polyurethane is not vinyl. However, as an industry, we tend to call everything with the coated surface a vinyl. We have to stop that because it's not fair to the client. It's not fair to anyone because they all perform differently. And the polyurethane is a synthetic product, and it has all of the great things about the environment. It has no PVCs, no phthalates, no plasticizers, all those good things. It meets Green Guard certification, but the problem is it's not performing. This product has been really popular the last 10 to 12 years, and the failure rate of textiles has grown significantly in terms of claims since the increase in the polyurethane. So we have to look at that and say, is it as good? Well, you know what? It looks beautiful. It feels beautiful. It upholsters beautifully. So it is very popular. The one thing I think it can help is to look at the hydrolysis testing. These products are posted with double rungs. The mills have to start publishing the hydrolysis testing, because that really is the durability test. And that will give you a better idea. What happens is the exposure to chemicals, the use of these products, they start to look really shiny. They start to feel a little bit smoother in the wear areas. And then they start to get a little hard. They may even delaminate, where you see like a cellophane layer coming off, and a lot of the elasticity has disappeared, and somebody sits on it and it cracks apart. So knowing that that's going to happen. Now, we've been through this with a lot of the mills, and they have been forced to acknowledge that this is a serious problem. A lot of these products are failing with 1 year to 2 years to 3 years, simply because, again, how often, how wet, how long, how strong has affected their wear as well. Because 40 times a day, and the product is a hydrolysis 3, you're going to end up maybe having the product in place, if you're doing that kind of thing, for 1 year. And that's not what you want. So that's why these conversations are important. Now, the manufacturers of the polyurethane have acknowledged that they are a problem in terms of durability. So you'll see here beside this, it's new. And what's new about it is the mills are now introducing, some call it EPU, which is endurance polyurethane, others CPU, clean polyurethane. Some are just giving it a totally new name. So ask the questions, what is it? And what they've done is they've made the top coat thicker. They've made the molecular structure a little different so that it is more resistant to damages. It has all of the great values that the original polyurethanes had. Those polyurethanes are still available. And again, they're not all created equal. Just because it's a vinyl doesn't mean it can go in healthcare, just because it's a polyurethane doesn't mean it should go in healthcare. So those questions still need to be asked. What is good is that it is thicker. We don't have a long history because they're relatively new, this change. But what needs to be acknowledged is they are thicker. And because they're thicker, they don't upholster as beautifully. And so when you're looking at the upholstery, you may end up with some ripples, especially on the corners of things, because it's not as pliable because of the thickness of the top coat. And so some of the patterns that they have improved them to this thicker consistency. They haven't changed the name. They've left the name the same. So when you hear that from us, that there may be ripples that you're not used to, it's not that the job is different. It's that the product is different, and it's not upholstering the same. So at one time, if you had product A, there was nothing that showed bad, but now it might. So those are things that we'd like to share and make sure you're aware of. Silica is another coated textile. It is a silicone byproduct, and it creates a synthetic leather, which upholsters nice. It is probably one of the better wearing textiles. It's a little on the pricey side, but it is one of the textiles that has performed the best when exposed to the disinfectants, and certainly the different practices and the hours of use and the different applications that we spoke of. This product fares pretty good. The thing I will comment on in terms of the silica, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of really good looking products, and it's very versatile where it could be used because of the variety that it has. it was proprietary to one manufacturer for a very long, well, for 10, 12 years. It is now an open market product. So most of the manufacturers are now introducing a form of silica. So you might want to consider it. What, in terms of the things that we're hearing back that cause some concern, is I would really consider about where I use it in terms of senior applications. We hear back from a number of our clients that seniors find it cold and slippery. And I don't know too many seniors that aren't cold all the time and that aren't afraid of falling. So if you put silica on certain products, they may have some fears, psychological fears that we're precipitating, but they don't know where the fear is coming from, but it's the textile. So I think we have to be cautious of when we're using silica, and it may involve use by seniors. I've heard way too many times not to have some concerns. The other thing is, because it's been in the market for some time, with the exposure to various disinfectants, the top surface starts to feel a little sticky, and some places have complained that it develops a fish smell. We have spoken to the manufacturers that we deal with on this product, and they can't explain either one. So just to be aware as a caution. Then we have the thermoplastic elastomer. Thermoplastic elastomer, the one that we are involved with is LDI Enviro Leathers product. We've had this as part of our offering now for about 9 years. And the thermoplastic elastomer, this company actually started out in body bags, and they were really encouraged to get into the textile business because the body bags were able to resist all these body fluids and be cleaned and then reused, whereas the challenges in just using the furniture has been horrendous for our healthcare partners. And we want to do a better job, so we're looking at different technologies all the time. And this thermoplastic elastomer has been very well positioned price-wise, but it's also performing extremely well. They have a unique warranty, a little different than everybody else's, and so you might want to look at that. And the difference being that most warranties are 8 hours, regular use, and no disinfectants, whereas this one is a 3 years, 24/7, any application. So it covers certainly the challenges that you face. Now, in terms of the TPE, on some of the products, especially Wyoming, which is a puncture resistant product, which is excellent if you're doing any mental health area where you're concerned for people hiding contraband in product, cutting the surface of the textile, then the Wyoming is quite good, but it is thicker. So there will be some challenges with being able to upholster, especially on curves and corners, without having some puckering or perhaps some ripples that may be a cause of concern for IPAC. Otherwise, the product has performed really well. And in the time that we've been using it, the 9 or 10 years, we've only had one claim, and that was because somebody sat on it and they had a stud on their pants and it scratched the surface of it. So as far as performance goes, I think it's been really exceptional. And the reason that we have to pay attention to this is, as I said, usually the textile will fail before the product does. So we also want to make sure that not only do we have to make better decisions about textiles, but we need to consider, can the product be changed on site? Can you remove the seat? Can you remove the back? Could you change the textile out and still use the materiality of the rest of the product, being the frame? Because that will help save money too, if the various components can be worked with. Sorry, my throat is dry today. So when we look at that in conjunction with other things, what we hear today is that people are really interested in having more residential, hotel, spa feeling within their environments. So we have a product that we've discovered that's relatively new in the marketplace. It's called TechLoom. The company that we're working with right now in terms of the TechLoom product is called Architects. So as I mentioned before, not all products are created equal. So when I speak to something, it's specific, then I'll make sure you understand where that is coming from. So in this case, it's the Architects product. What's beautiful about this is it's a woven textile, which everybody loves because it looks so fabric-like. It looks like we want it to look. And what's nice is on the top surface, it has the TPE, which we've really had great experience with through the LDI product, and it's fused to the top of the textile, the woven textile. Now, it's not a woven treated textile, it's just the woven textile, but it has the TPE coating bonded to the top. So it's really kind of like the best of all worlds. And so far what we've been able to do and the testing we have, it really is encouraging because it's a product we didn't have before. And you'll see from what's there, it does comply with Prop 65. It meets all of the VOC standards. It meets the Healthier Hospital Initiative, which also the LDI product meets. So it's important to pull everything together. So environmentally, it ticks all the boxes that everybody's been really concerned about. But the performance we're expecting to be very good with the TPE top coat. And the only misfortune is we don't have history. We're building our history with this product. And if we start to see problems with it, we will certainly share that going forward. So in terms of the world of healthcare, that's really the package of goods that we have. It's either a woven treated textile, it's a coated surface from the various categories, or the new woven textile with the TPE coating. So the top feels like a solid surface. And we just want to say that with hospitals, the goal is, and with all healthcare, including senior care of all kinds, the goal is to make them more inviting, make people feel more relaxed, less concerned, and more at peace with the process they're going to be going through. So having those challenges, hopefully this information will help you meet those challenges by having better selections made for the healthcare. So we recently completed the Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital, and it's a very proud project. We did over 11,000 pieces of furniture in this hospital. They did select the LDI as the standard, and the challenge was the orders started coming when COVID hit. And the good news is, as a partner to our healthcare, we were able to complete that project on time, complete with no deficiencies. We're very proud of it, and we're proud to partner with any healthcare facility to meet their needs. There are a number of other projects that we've worked on in our website. And as far as product solutions, you can see from the top center there, we've even created in quick response solutions to deal with the COVID pandemic. And this was one that was used by one hospital in terms of having people be able to still use the cafeteria. We've done a number of different solutions to help them deal with the COVID pandemic. We thank you for your time today, and I would like to open it up for any questions or discussion points. But we really do want to thank you and Staples for allowing us the opportunity today to present some hopefully new information and useful information about the selection of textiles in your world. Thank you.
Deb, thank you so much. The one thing from your presentation that I think a lot of people are going to take away, it may not be, certainly you reviewed multiple different streams of fabrics that are used within the healthcare environment. And I'm always so surprised myself, just how many there are and their different applications. So, I really kind of go back to that one slide that you say it's really about that, that discovery stage and really having those conversations, with our healthcare clients and say, to your point, saying, what are you doing? how often, I think you had 3 terms there.
How wet, how long, how strong.
Just fantastic. And who would have known that, again, when we say vinyls, that we're trying to categorize so many different products in a very old phrase, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
I found it was interesting, and I do have a question, for you. Antimicrobial still comes up, quite a bit, and I've heard that it might actually have a resurgence, maybe not in vinyls, but in different applications of materials. So, we do hear about, is that antimicrobial? And it's funny that, in your presentation, they're taking it out.
That's right. So antimicrobials is one of those things that you have people here and you have people here. And for a number of years, and I can go back probably 20 years ago, Global added antimicrobial additives to some of our product finishes because nobody would purchase the product if they didn't have those antimicrobial inhibitors. And now we have removed them, because if they have the antimicrobial inhibitors, they won't buy them. And one of the things is the Healthier Hospitals Initiative is to remove those harmful, because a lot of them are harmful chemicals. They're on the Prop 65 list, they're on the red list, so they may be in the, part of declare. So it depends on the different standards. I know at one time silver ion was something that, if your product didn't have silver ion, then nobody would buy it. Well, now silver ion, now it's copper. Again, there's a number of papers written. If anybody is curious and wants to know more, I can provide a number of papers that are really against the antimicrobial additives, because it is creating that superbug. We hear about how people don't respond to antibiotics because you build up immunity to them. Well, the same thing is with the antimicrobials. We're making everything so sterilized that people aren't able to fight the common bug. And the C. difficile virus and MRSA are 2 of the most frightful things in a hospital, but they're not just hospitals, airplanes, anywhere. And it really is about those superbugs surviving. The variants on the COVID, those variants are because people are resisting. They're the part that resists and carries on and grows stronger. So there's a real division on what people think about the antimicrobial use. Perkins and Will did a really good paper on it, and basically there's no proof that they work, but there's no proof they don't work. But really, why are we adding them? And nobody really knows for sure.
Right.
So yeah, right now the most common position is don't use them.
That's great information. Thank you. So, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. Deb, thank you so much for the information. If you do have any questions and you would like to learn more about how we can have those conversations, please reach out to your Staples Business Advantage representative, and they will help connect you with the furniture specialists, and we can ensure that we're having these conversations with you. So again, thank you so much for joining today, and have a great day.
Thank you.